We're live for the public. Hooray!
Great.
This is so exciting. Hi, everybody who isn't watching it, because that's what happens. It's me, the person that's here, and I'm joined by, I don't know why I'm gesturing, because he's not anywhere in this room. I'm joined by Dirt for Nothing.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
One viewer. Hooray. It's probably like you. But I'm sure they'll come.
Yeah, they will.
Yeah.
How do I sound? Do I sound all right? Am I
sound great? I'm reading you loud and clear.
Cool.
Sounds awesome. I don't know how it sounds to them. Maybe it's a ridiculous feedback loop forever and ever and ever. That sounds crazy. I hope so. That'd be funny. All right. Oh, look, people are here. Yay. Oh my God, lots of people are here. All right. So, all right. Are we just calling you Durf? Is that what we're calling you?
Yeah, that's easy enough, I think.
All right. I like it. All right, Durf. Why don't you introduce yourself before we dive into the meat of this? Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and why you want to do this?
All right, thanks. Yeah, I'm Dirt for Nothing. Just started this channel, and really all I'm trying to do is kind of like bring to light topics that really people shouldn't or don't talk about, but should be talking about, especially if we want to kind of put society in the direction of where we want to kind of like evolve instead of like just kind of staying circular and where we are right now. A lot of social decay going on. So yeah, just trying to bring to light a lot of the topics that I think people are oblivious to and probably should have discussions about.
So what happens if these topics make me uncomfortable and they hurt my feelings and I just don't want to talk about them because I can't deal with anything that runs counter to the things that I believe?
I guess it's going to be a short stream then.
Well, we all know that's not the case. I would certainly be the world's biggest hypocrite after a lot of the videos I just put out. But I was like, no, I don't agree with you. That makes me uncomfortable, and hung up. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I got to be honest. There's some times where I don't agree with you at all, like 100% flatly out. Like, I'm just like, what is going on?
We definitely have to get into some of those. We definitely. So I'm going to let you, since you're the one who pursued this line of communication. This is your conversation. You got to run this stuff.
Okay.
So wherever you want to go, we'll go. Unless everyone in the chat section starts crying, and then we're definitely going to go there and stay there. If people start crying, we're just gonna run it all day long.
Okay. I kind of want to go off of like what has been on your mind actually, because like I know what's on my mind, everything. So what is on your mind right now? We can kind of, divulge off that.
Like in terms of the people, the world, the life.
What is on your mind right now that's annoying you?
Oh God, everybody.
Okay.
Mine are really specific to what just happened this past weekend. I'm a part of the fencing world, and what I get stuck in. So as I spoke to with you a little bit when we talked prior to this, that's been the one place working as a fencing referee. I talked about the differences. Like I get treated differently because I'm female all the time. But working as a fencing referee and trying to work as a U.S. fencing referee is the only place where I felt disadvantaged based on my sex.
Okay.
Every time I go to these tournaments, I sort of deal with that a little bit.
Now, is that from people, or is it your own kind of like self, reflection of like, what makes you feel that way?
Let's put it this way. I have a friend, she's black and a female saber referee. And she went to one of our assigners a couple years ago now and said, why won't you assign me in saber? And he's told her, you talk to people like you think you're a man. He's Russian, so his English isn't very good.
Oh.
You talk to people like you think you're a man. You are a girl. You need to talk to people more like you're a girl.
Oh, so, yeah.
Like that. Things like that, obvious things like that. And then other little things like when I first started out, there's a numeric rating system when you referee, where you start out as a 10 and then you work your way up, and a 1 means like you could be doing the Olympics. And a 5 is like you can do national level tournaments, but it's sort of the beginning of that. So I was working really hard to get my 5 when I started doing national events, and I had an assigner tell me, I'm not putting you in this particular saber event because it's not strong enough. You can't get a 5 for it. And then another guy in it, a young man, a couple years younger than I, who this was his first national tournament ever. This was my like second or third, his first one ever. He put him in that event and gave him a 5 for it.
Gotcha.
So stuff like that, pretty blatant.
So yeah, that is kind of like blatantly out there, sexist. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, because it does, but this day and age, I think it's kind of warped to where it's kind of turning to an advantage that people use instead of it actually being injustice, it's actually being used against people to,
Yeah. So I just wanted to everyone watching and commenting. Yes, I fence. I do know how to fence very well. Just letting you know that because we're having a conversation here, you're all invited, but we're not going to be responding as much to a lot of the comments where we invite you heavily to yell at each other a lot. And Durf, I'll stop every now and then and just
sure.
you, since people will be joining us and be like, who the hell is this random guy she's talking to?
Yeah. Sounds good.
So for those of you guys who've jumped on in the past couple minutes, this is Durf or Nothing. He's a dude who wants to have a debate about stuff that we don't agree about. We actually agree on a lot of things, but we want to find the stuff we don't agree on. So this is a great topic here too, because that's one of my issues that I think people don't consider. I can agree with the fact that people overuse the minority card a lot. Mm-hmm. But what I see as a result of that is now the legitimate situations where discrimination still exists against minority groups aren't being taken seriously as much.
Right, it's like cry wolf now, pretty much.
Exactly. So that's there are a lot of people out there saying, fuck you for playing the diversity card. And there's people like me being like, I don't play the diversity card, but right now I'm being discriminated against. We can't just brush this off because y'all think we're all making this up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like also a two-way street, but I just feel, and this is going to sound like very MGTOW of me, but it's not, because I'm not MGTOW. Mm-hmm. But men get the card of being the monster all the time. It's always the man's fault. It's always the men. I mean, throughout history, you can't dispute that was the case. But I think this day and age, men are coming of age, and it doesn't get brought to light as much anymore. I think it's kind of like the women are always first now. Men get put back on the back burner, which, I really don't care. I think a man knows what a man should be. They shouldn't have to cater to anyone.
Yeah. But, you really think that in most cases women are getting put ahead of men?
Well, I guess as far as, well, definitely for college and universities, I know that straight out, which is fine, but it psychologically, that puts a toll on men. All this stuff, I think that's being put against men. Men aren't the same. Men are not the same as they were 50 years ago or 100 years ago. We are more sensitive to what is going on in the world. And I think we still get that kind of card of where we're still attacked for being what our ancestors were hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
I agree and disagree, right? I think that there's a point to which, yes, I think men get attacked for what men collectively have done, mm-hmm. and that is wrong. But men also get attacked collectively. Anytime men get attacked collectively or individuals get attacked based on the collective's deeds, it's wrong. But there are still, and that's the worst part, is those men still exist. They're not gone. Yeah. The guys who sincerely believe that the woman belongs in a kitchen making babies, they're not gone. They haven't been eradicated. I don't like to use the word eradication necessarily, but that I think is part of the problem is that, and that's what happens is we get into this dialogue where, someone like me will fight someone like you, where you're not one of the problem men and I don't need to be fighting you. But even though that fight still needs to be had.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I used to be a problem man like that. I used to be where I would have rage and I would get angry at my spouse because I didn't know how to control that. And I didn't realize what I was doing. I thought I was right all the time. I thought I was the one in control and I needed to be the man and I had to be in the shoes of what to do and lead all the directions. But, it cost a lot for me to keep, instead of realizing what I should have been, I was just kind of egotistical in my thinking.
So what changed that for you? I'm really curious because it's very unusual, I think, to find someone admit that about themselves and then stand here saying they're a different person. So when did that change for you and why?
It happened because a series of events. I think when you have a traumatic event and it's multiple events, it can either make you or break you. And I think that's what made me. It almost broke me. I think from the way I was acting, and I didn't realize it at the time, from my rage, it destroyed my relationships with friends, couldn't control myself. So it took a long time to kind of reflect and build myself back up and realize what I had done was the wrong steps. And if I had just made the right steps, I would have never done that. I would have never had, the outcome was still the same outcome, but if I had changed my way of living and the way I was thinking and my whole perception of the world changed. So, you know, in that happening, yeah, I never thought I would like be the person I thought I became, that angry, rageful person, but it did happen. I mean, it's inside me. I think it's inside all of us. And I think if you let that go, if you go overboard with it, that's the outcome of everything. So I had to make a decision and decide, you know, I don't want to be this person. I don't have to be this person. I don't have to be bound by my genetics or anything of that sort. So, yeah.
That's really cool. I have a follow-up question, but real quick. Hey, everybody! For those just joining us, we're talking to Dirt for Nothing. We're having an intelligent and respectful discourse about some of the big button issues that are out there right now. Some of the stuff that's been on our mind that bothers us. We're looking for places pointedly where we disagree, and it's such a weird experience. I had this when we first started talking, which is that it almost sounds like we never disagree, because even if when we do, we actually still respect each other's point of view, which is really cool. So I guess we're trying to be good role models for the rest of you. So anyway, to tag on piggyback on the back of that, because it's a really fascinating. You're a fascinating person in that you can say you came from this place of problematic masculinity and through various circumstances changed your thinking on that. So now there are women in this world who have been victims of those types of men. It's some in more severe ways than others, some in incredibly severe and damaging ways. And that's, I think, where the discourse gets halted. How do you approach, especially as a male person, how do you approach a woman like that, a woman who has been, not in her mind, in her life, actually factually the victim? How do you approach her to get you to understand that not all men are like that, and that in order to create dialogue and move forwards, she has to get over that effectively?
Honestly, I'll be 100% with you. I've dealt, I don't want to say dealt, but I've experienced that a couple of times throughout my life, even within my family, because I know that some of my aunts have had that experience with my uncles, and they, you know, were victimized or just really abused, not physically, but like verbally, mentally, emotionally. And I think it's hard because, you know, I think everyone is can be conditioned to accept we can adapt to certain things and evolve from certain things, but I think a lot of us are genetically predisposed to events in our lifetime. So what I mean by that is, if hypothetically, like, let me say I got hurt as a child when I was a kid, I was a happy-go-lucky child, boom, I get abused by someone physically. I'm a shy kid now. I'm an introvert. I used to be an extrovert. I think it takes a lot of conditioning and time and trust from people. So I would say the same for men and women. Women who have been hurt or victimized. Men need to be men. Like, they need to start being the right type of men, is what I'm trying to say. And not one that women think they should be, but actually genuine men who understand themselves and know who they should be and who they want to be. I think men, like you said, kind of use that machismo, you know, to be men, but instead of that, they don't use logic or reasoning or understanding.
So I'd love for you to describe, right, since this is your idea of an ideal man, right? It's clearly not the ones that we've held on to for hundreds of years, who are these super macho manly men who say, to hell with feelings, punch things, rawr. But it's definitely not this third wave feminism version of the softened, emasculated, you know, yes, whatever you want, dear man.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you don't want, I've realized that, because I still interact and love to watch like UFC fights. I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I love to be a man, and I'm a red-blooded American, so I love that. But when it comes to women, it's like a switch. It's like my mind like tries to understand, or as best I can, what a woman wants, what a woman needs, and try to provide that for them. If I do that, I see better outcomes with that. I see women who are actually attracted to me, women who want to understand me, women who have that possibility in their mind for a family. I think it's an underlining where women have like a fail safe in them, and they can see what a man to them is. And like naturally, not this day and age where you have decadence and you have people wanting bigger houses. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about genuine love and romance. I think women need that, and I don't think a lot of men know how to give that to women.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a learned behavior for you, that the softness that a man needs to give to a woman.
Naturally, I don't think men off the bat, like say if there was no mother involved and no females involved and it was just a man being raised by a man, that interaction is never going to be, hardly going to be there. You have no influence on anything about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's self-taught, conditioned.
Now, I haven't had that many experiences with men solely raised by men with no prominent women in their life. However, I have met a lot of guys where it's the opposite, where they have a mother, they were raised by a single mother, they had lots of sisters, things like that, situations like that. And I have to say, those men make better lovers because they're used to listening. They understand the various levels of communication. I personally think, and I'm not a person to say that women and men are the same. I think we are naturally different. I think we do different things and communicate different ways. I think that women put a lot more into their nonverbal communication a lot of the time, more so than men. I think men don't double speak as often, or just there's not as much nuance. And I'm not saying that because men can't have that or aren't good at that. I think just in general, and I think that's a difference in not biologically, but that's a nature nurture thing for me. I think that based on the way gender roles have evolved, men have the luxury and have had the luxury for a long time of just being able to speak their mind and say what they want. Whereas women have had to go around. Women have had to use different channels to get to the same places, or different methods to get. I mean, that's just the nature of when you have one person who's, considered the alpha role and one person who isn't. They can't use the same channels, and women have had to use much more circuitous routes to getting what they want from men. Definitely.
Yeah, it's definitely that. Yeah. I think there is a role to be played. I mean, when it comes to a man and a woman, I can't say traditionally, because we are always like just evolving in our culture, but we can take little pieces of what we thought were the best from our ancestors and just keep evolving from that. That's the best thing I think we could do.
Yeah. We'd love to hear from you guys in the chat, or if you're watching later, feel free to comment. What is an ideal man? Preferably leave comments, because we're not reading the chats really. I mean, only a little bit. I'm reading it a little bit because it's funny. Yeah, what do you guys think is the best ideal of a man right now? How is it different from what we've had and what we have? If you are a man who was raised only by men, or men like that, talk to us a little bit about that. I'd love to hear if Durf's theory is right, that men with only male influences don't acquire the soft, tender, loving side that they need to romance a lady. That's the thing that you should talk about in the comments, because yeah.
I'm just saying that from personal experience. I've had a lot of experience and you hit it on the head. Like, I was raised by a village of women. Like, I have a lot of women in my family, and most of the time men were not around. So I was raised like how to properly, eat dinner at a table, how to properly talk, when to be spoken to. I don't know if that was kind of a punishment for me being a man, but I just know that it helped me to, like you said, develop those skills with women.
Awesome. Yeah. You just tuning in, we're talking to Dirt for Nothing. We're having, by we, I mean me, I'm talking to him. Haha, all mine. We're having a discussion about various ideals, various issues that people aren't talking about today, and talking about them, and maybe saying things that you're afraid to say because we're brave. That's what we're doing. All right. There are a lot of other things. One of the things I did want to bring this up because I thought it was fascinating. You mentioned how one of the things you used to do was reach out to white supremacists and engage them in dialogues about their white supremacy, etc. Can you talk a little about that and some of the things you discovered from those peoples?
Sure. So to me, the whole white supremacy thing, this right now, is not really about one ideology. It's about, some people have it where they want like a complete nation of white people to preserve their race. Some people believe that white people are really superior than any other race, and because of technology, history, where they stand on culture, everything. So when it comes to white supremacy, some of them have that feeling of not against other races. Like I said, the white nation, they want to preserve their race. Like some have, like with the Jewish state, they want to preserve their ideology. with that. I had one white supremacist telling me he was afraid that if they don't have a white nation, their lineage would die out because of all the intermixing and of races. So he was afraid for his daughter, because he still has a daughter, but afraid that she will grow up and not understand her culture, her history, because it's all trying to be destroyed by other cultures and other races.
So what? And that's the other thing, Marie. What is white culture? What is this thing that people are so afraid is going to go away?
I don't know if they're trying to hold on to their history or their past. I mean, I'm half white, so I'm not going to say it's white culture. I think for America, it's American culture. I'm not going to say it's white culture. Yes, it might have been started by white farmers and settlers, but this country has allowed us to completely take in other people and evolve with everybody. Yeah. We're not Germany, we're not France. Well, actually, yeah, France actually has evolved too. But I'm getting to the point of we have evolved from that, and it's sad to say that white people. I can't say white people, just white culture. There is no white culture. There's there shouldn't be a black culture, but there is a black culture because they hold themselves in that state. Mm-hmm. I mean, what do you consider American culture? Do you consider it to be, should it just be for black people? Like some people should have a black state, some people should have a white state. I mean, what do you consider?
I think that any form, I mean, there was a whole thing we went through in the civil rights movement: is separate but equal is not equal. It never is. It never will be, for various reasons, because it can't be. Even if everyone has their own little state and their own sovereign nation, their own whatever, based on the numbers that each individual one has, they'll have different amounts of power and things like that. And I also think that's just a really sad way to live. I mean, why would you cut yourself off from other influences? I mean, that's to me is the opposite of progress. The opposite of progress is when you close yourself off and you say, I need to only care about the things that are important to me. I need to protect them and preserve them and not let anything else mix with them or taint them.
And that goes with everyone, though, because some people, whether they're black or white, they don't consider them by people or by human beings. They consider them as a race. Yeah,
and I agree. I think it does go for all of them. I think it's fine to preserve traditions from your family or your culture. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm 0% religiously Jewish, but I throw a Passover Seder every year. Throw is the wrong word, I guess. I celebrate Passover every year. I celebrate Hanukkah sometimes. I celebrate whatever I feel like when I feel like it, because of the traditions, because of the cultures. I say the prayers, not because I believe in God or I want to praise God, but because of the tradition of it.
So, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing against you. I mean, because I know you probably already know when I talk to you how I have an issue with the Jewish ideology. From what I've learned, I don't even know completely about it, but from what I see, I don't know, it's unfair sometimes. It's unjust, the way that, well, I'll give you an example. So you have the banking system, which I know that probably not everyone will agree with, but the top 5 bankers are Jewish. And literally, they control. I don't want to go into a conspiracy, but I'll just leave that at that. So there's that. There's the Jewish state and the Palestine, and the way that is being, outsourced and in the takeover of Palestine. So I mean, there's that. There's the victimization, I want to say, about Jews. If you are an anti-Semite, boom, or if you say anything that does not agree with the Jewish faith, ideology, opinion, whatever, boom, you're an anti-Semite straight off the bat.
This is really, I'd love to delve into this right now. This is something I do know stuff about, and we definitely disagree. So, first thing, if every single top exec banker in the world is a Jew, the rest of you can fucking suck it, because and here's why. The reason that Jews got into money, right? Mm-hmm. Back in the, in like the 1500s, 1400s, whatever, like when Shakespeare was writing things like The Merchant of Venice, money lending was considered a dirty profession. Mm-hmm. Nobody wanted to do it. You know, it's the reason that we're never going to have like why jobs are going to remain vacant when we kick all the illegal immigrants out, because there are jobs that people just don't want to do. And that was one of them. Nobody wanted to do that job. That was one of the only jobs that Jews were allowed to do.
Fair
so
enough.
This is a career that they got very, very good at because it was literally the only way they could make a living. They were spit on for it. They were ridiculed for it. They were shamed for it. They were put down for it. They were kicked for it. You know, all of these things. It was considered this horrible, disgusting, dirty thing that only the Jews could do because we hate the Jews because everyone always hates the Jews. So the fact that, I mean, it's just kind of like it's a nice little fuck you. Like, oh, well, you made us the only ones who could do this. So we got really fucking good at it.
Right.
And it is understandable, considering that we have been doing it the longest. We have been money lending and handling money the longest, i.e. hundreds and hundreds of years, that we would be the best at it now, and that there would be the most of us in those fields as opposed to other ones.
So can I interject really quick? Because I want to ask you a counterpoint. So if America is so good at winning, or well, taking over countries and winning wars and blah, 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 should we keep doing it till America rules the world? Because I mean, I'm not trying to disagree with you and be an asshole, but I'm just saying, just because someone's good at it doesn't make it right.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the kind of thing where if you look at it, take for example, this whole idea about, yes, Lord Nurgle, that is where the stereotype comes from. So yes, no, but banking is not inherently evil. I mean, some people may disagree with that statement.
Yeah, when it's used right. I mean, you're right. Banking is a good system when it's not when it doesn't exploit people.
Exactly. Now, if you want to say, oh, well, the majority of people exploiting the system are Jewish, then you have to look at the percentage of the top, like you said, the top 5 bankers, Jewish. Then you have to look at things like how the numbers crunch, right? If the majority of bankers are Jewish, the majority of corrupt bankers are therefore also Jewish. It's just basic numbers, right? Now, if no one's probably ever taken the percentage. If you want to look at, okay, the percentage of all Jewish bankers who've done bad things versus the percentage of all other bankers who've done bad things, I would argue.
Really, it's nothing against the bankers. It's just the fact that how they put themselves in power and keep themselves in power by keeping the system in check the way it is. People can never really attain to the top, and only they can attain to the top is if they exploit people.
Yeah, and I think that's the nature of banking more than it is the nature of Judaism. I think that it's this.
Oh, okay, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I don't want to correlate that. That's just one of the points I was getting at, though.
For me, though, I think that is a good counterpoint. But the fact is, again, like I said, if the majority of bankers happen to be Jewish because of the historical reasons for it, it is not the Judaism that makes them inherently greedy or bad or exploitative.
I know that some of them believe that. There's a lot of Jewish people that I've talked to, and we need to keep things in power. We need to keep things in check because the Gentiles don't know how to.
So that philosophy, you've seen Black Panther?
I have not.
Okay, so for you and for those who haven't, the main villain in it is set up to be sympathetic as a victim of circumstance, right? Obviously, the villain, he's a bad guy. He does bad things, and he's not excused for those things. He still has to be held accountable for the bad things he did. But the other side of it is you have to look at the victim of circumstance. Is it right when Jews form their little exclusive clubs and say Jews only, let's keep everyone out and keep this for us? No. Yeah. But history don't lie. When you go through the history of the Jews, pretty much every 100 years or so or less usually, somebody is trying to kill all the Jews. Someone is trying to kill all of them, and not just like a Jew or a handful of Jews. Someone gets it in their head, let's just kill all the Jews. In fact, like Hitler probably only did it because, he knew it was a popular thing to do and he was trying to win popularity in his country.
I thought Hitler was doing that because he understood how World War I was working and he didn't want that system to, overtake his country. So he really wanted to free Europe.
I mean, maybe. Okay. Who knows why Hitler did anything? He was straight crazy. I think we can probably agree on that.
Yeah.
Definitely brilliant, but straight crazy.
He took things a little too far.
A little bit.
But wait. I want to ask you that then. So if he could have taken over, and if I know this is a stupid hypothetical, but if he was allowed to take over and he did it by any means necessary, it's his right to do it because he was able to accomplish it. I mean, is that the logic that we're using? The same with Judaism.
Honestly, who's gonna say no to that? I mean.
But where does our moral compass come to? Where is justice? That's what I'm getting at. Is yes, things can be done that way, but that doesn't make it the right way. So in order to keep a check and balance, we have to have, it has to be as equal as possible. And it can't be 20 for the lower half and 80 for the 1% or 10%, whatever.
But let's say Hitler had succeeded at world domination, takes over the whole world at great expense, kills a bunch of people. My people don't even exist anymore because fuck the Jews. And he brings about, because he controls everything, he brings about an era of globalism and cooperation where everyone works together. And eventually, you know, the racial purity and the Aryanism sort of gets put second by the wayside next to globalism and progress, and all these wonderful things happen, and we colonize Mars and, you know, reverse global warming and all that shit. At some point in history, I don't know how long it takes, at some point in history, Hitler becomes a hero. Maybe a damaged and tainted one, you know, where people look at him and say, like, well, we don't agree with his methods, but I mean, look at the result. We saved humanity.
But it's like you said, it's a victim of circumstance. Germany was a victim of circumstance after World War I. He brought them up to power, you know, from them being poor and being in debt. No offense, I'm just saying, because of the of the interest that they were owed because of lending out money. They were owed. Instead of that, he banished as much as he could that policy and brought up the state to where people could enjoy life and fulfill it for their sake. They could build up their economy by themselves.
And it was certainly not the Jews that were responsible for the economic collapse of Germany after the First World War. It was 100% all of the sanctions.
No, but I'm saying afterwards, though. Afterwards, all the money lending to the German people, well, not all the German people, but the money lending that they were given kept them more in debt, kept them more poor, lost their homes, their farms.
I would have to go back and brush up on that, because my understanding was that was a lot due to the inflation that was caused by the sanctions and less lending. And
part of that too, yeah.
So either way, you know, when people do bad things to you, even if that were the case, even if we're 100%, Germany's economic collapse was because Jews did bad money lending practices. First of all, it's just all retribution for Shylock. If you have read The Merchant of Venice, that's what happened to him. He got dicked over, and it's not his fault. So
that's the whole thing, is everyone gets dicked over, and we'll see who the last one is to get dicked over.
But I mean, I think generally speaking, we can all agree that if a handful of people did a bad thing to you, genocide is probably not the correct response to that slight.
Okay.
Probably not. And then back to that idea again, like I said, the exclusivity, the reason why you see things. I mean, in Hollywood, you see this as well. You see, I mean, the Jewish Life, whatever, is Jewish Federation, are really big on organizing, you know, Jew events for Jewish people, to do Jewish things and talk to important Jewish people, of which there are many in Hollywood. Oh, Panama Mac is advocating for genocide. That's a nice, Panama Mac. Sorry, I just noting some comments. I think he was being facetious. But yeah, and that's the thing that happens. Now, one of the other things about that, right? Judaism is this exclusive club, except it's not, because one of the tenets of Judaism is make more Jews. And after World War II especially, that led to the rise of convert culture as well. Because there just weren't a lot of Jews anymore. And they're like, well, we can't just procreate all the time. That's going to take too long. So let's make more. Everyone's welcome. Come become Jewish. Like now, it's over the past several years, it's changed. Now converted Jews can go on birthright. Now you can wake up one day, decide I'm a Jew, convert to Judaism, and go on a free trip to Israel. You don't have to be born that way or be born into the exclusive little club. It's a club that people can join. There's that.
Fair enough.
But then also, it's interesting, you know, when you bring up the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the difference between the Israeli administration and the Israeli people could not be more stark. When you walk around Israel, if you talk to people in Israel, the majority of Israelis say that the government is far more right-leaning than they are. The majority of the Palestinians don't agree with how the people in charge are handling how Hamas and et cetera are handling the side of the conflict from their end. And the vast majority of people, Israeli and Palestinian alike, get along and just want to continue getting along. So unfortunately, I think it's another situation of absolute power corrupts absolutely, where you have very far right, very radical Israelis in power, and you have an extent to which the orthodoxy controls the country. I don't like Orthodox Judaism. Most non-Orthodox Jews don't. It is inherently sexist. It is very exclusive. It is very like I'm trying to even think of the word. It's just it's archaic, it's outdated, and it's very rigid in its ways. And unfortunately, there's a large portion of that, and there's a large portion of the right wing extremists that control Israel and its politics and its policies. And people don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
People don't want that. They
Well,
want
that's fair to know, because like you said, I don't think a lot of people understand that either, that the administration of Israel is really the one that's trying to pull the strings while both the states are trying to live freely.
Exactly. And most people are in support of a shared nation. The last person in Israeli history to come close to settling the conflict was Yitzhak Rabin, who was assassinated by Israeli extremists. He was not assassinated by Palestinians. He was not killed by terrorists. He was murdered by Israeli extremists, by people who then, eventually got into power, who managed to spin the narrative in their way that made it whatever. But so that is like, and I'm not for that. I definitely find a lot of that to be ridiculously abhorrent.
Okay, I want to ask you something real quick, and I hope I'm not going to offend you. I'm not trying to, but so why is there a stereotype? And this is me. I want to ask you what you think of this. Why is there such a stereotype when it comes to not just different religions, but on a whole? Why do people, well, not Jews, but why do people outside of Judaism, most of them, like for example, Christianity, why do we accept you? I can say I'm a Christian, but what I'm getting at is there are people who feel that, how do I say this? Remember when Jesus was in the temple?
Mm-hmm. I don't remember. I wasn't there.
Oh, but not you personally. But okay, that story of Jesus being in the temple, talking to the Pharisees, and he tells the Pharisees, God doesn't just belong to the Jews, it belongs to all of us. Mm-hmm. Why does that, I don't know. What I'm saying is, why do you feel people separate that completely from any other religion when it comes to Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, but specifically with Judaism? Why is there such hatred towards Jewish people?
There is that. I mean, I think some of it is that idea of the chosen people. In how, the Torah is written, the Jews are the chosen people. And actually, a lot of Christians will say that. They'll be like, yes, the Jews are the chosen people, which is dumb and creates that. I mean, there's something that Jews, I think, have clung onto in dark times to comfort themselves. Like, well, we're God's chosen one, so he loves us and we'll be fine. But what that does later is like any exclusive club where I'm a member and you're not. If, I walk around saying I'm God's chosen people are going to fucking hate me for that. And I think most people don't do that. I also think it's really ironic that that's the thing that happens because most Jews, the vast majority of Jews, don't feel that way. Don't feel like I'm better than you are because I'm chosen, or because I'm chosen, you're clearly not. And part of it's like there's no general, yes, in the Orthodoxy, etc., it exists, but in the general Jewish populace, there's no concept of I'm better than you or more enlightened than you because I'm Jewish and you're not. That's not something you really find, which I find ironic then because of that chosen people title, that hatred gets heaped upon us when we don't really do the hell condemnation thing. I mean, Judaism is a more ancient religion than Christianity that was never about death, the way Christianity rose at a time where life sucked and mortality rates were ridiculously high, and Christianity was a religion to give people hope and give people a reason because they were probably going to die soon, and they needed some reason to be a good person and something to look forward to after their miserable existence. So that's when Christianity took root, and so as a result, Christianity has a lot more emphasis on the afterlife than Judaism does. And one of the parts of that is that you get Christian people who will tell you that you're going to hell if you don't believe in Jesus. And maybe just by the numbers, but like you don't usually see radical Jews standing on the street corners holding the signs up that tell you to save your soul today or else. And when you do see Jews doing that, they're usually Jews for Jesus. Right. So it's ironic to me that that's the case, is like we hate the Jews for being this exclusive little club when most Jews are not. And even the Orthodox ones more just keep to themselves and don't go around being like, well, you're Christian, so obviously you're wrong. Whereas that, and I call people like that Christian, because anybody who truly is Christian and, you know, believes in Jesus and the teacher, like actually believes what he says and what he taught, probably isn't going around condemning people. But so people call them people who call themselves Christian. People who call themselves Christians do that all the time. I just find that interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty tough, to be honest, you know, just to go over all the points of, I mean, you brought up a lot of good ones of, as far as, I didn't know that about the ethno state, you know, and the administration of you know, Israel, and most of the people just want to live freely. But, I mean, I guess that makes sense. I mean, most religions want to live. Well, I don't know. I can't say Islam because I haven't studied Islam. Maybe you have studied a little bit about it, but, I think most people just want to live peacefully, without any corruption or exploitation.
Well, I mean, if you look at our country from the outside, it's the same thing. If you look at our country from the outside right now, you see
Sure.
people running around, you know, as social justice warriors, condemning everybody who says something that offends them, and you see the administration in power and people behind that, and that looks like, you know, ultra conservative, money hungry, the opposites, you know, or whatever that is. And the reality is, as we're discovering more and more, having conversations like these, and with all you wonderful people that have, you know, that's joined onto this channel, is that most of us are in the middle somewhere. Most of us want to get along. Most of us don't really give that much of a shit what you believe and what your personal opinions are, as long as we can all be reasonable, decent, civilized people.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree on that. Try to.
Believes in elves, so that's something.
So he's elvish. Got you.
He's very upset that there are no elves in the Bible. I noticed that. I also noticed that Iron Wolf is watching, and if you guys haven't checked out, I don't know, Derek, nothing. If you saw I linked his video. He does a great rant about guns, which maybe we can get into. If we want to get into, I guess we could always get into the gun issue. I think that Iron Wolf does a great job talking about it. So I just like to know, Iron Wolf, are you driving right now? I hope not, since you're typing in this chat. He's a truck driver. I hope he's not. But yeah, why don't we segue into that? Why don't we get into gun control? Because that's everyone's favorite topic. Right?
Definitely. So what do you think?
I grew up in a suburb of Philadelphia where people didn't really own guns. And I grew up, you know, with a certain, in a small ideological bubble where guns were bad. Guns are bad. Guns are evil. We don't really need them. You can just make them all go by and it's fine. Like, who needs guns? Guns are scary. Guns are bad.
Oh my God.
But then I went to school in Vermont. And I made a friend who said, hey, I got a bunch of guns. You want to go shoot them? And I'd always been curious about firing. I'm a naturally violent person.
Yeah.
There's a certain appeal there. Hey, look, there's another truck driver here. You and Iron Wolf should be friends. Oh, sorry, you're a truck drivet. Maybe you are driving right now. Don't text and drive. So I know I said I was going to pay attention to the comments, but I'm paying attention to the comments a little bit. Yeah, so I went to Vermont and I meet this guy who's like, hey, I have all these guns. And Vermont is an concealed carry state where you don't even need a permit. You just buy a gun, you can just carry it around. It's fine. They're really strict about their printing and flashing laws, but they're not, you know, otherwise, like, have your guns, have them all. So he invited me shooting, and I got to hold a gun for the first time, and I got to shoot a gun for the first time. And he was.
What kind of gun was it?
I shot a bunch. He had a bunch. My favorite one was the Ruger Blackhawk.
Nice.
And I want one. I really want one. It's not the most practical for like the zombie apocalypse, but it has single and dual action, so you can do the cowboy thing with it. It's just great. I got to fire a shotgun. I was like playing Halo for long enough, maybe just always want to fire a shotgun.
Wow.
I did. And it was awesome. And then because he didn't want to blow through too many shells, he taught me some like tactical reload drills, which were really cool. So I got super into that. I got super interested in that. And I started to understand how the gun debate is so fractured because there are so many different kinds of people in this country living so many different lives. And just like in all these other big debates, failing to understand other people's perspectives, you know, failing to understand that it's not just that the gun issue is not just, oh, well, guns work this way in Wyoming, or guns work this way in Vermont, or guns work this way in Compton, or guns work this way in New York City. It has to be, if we're going to create country nationwide gun laws, they need to take into account all of the people who want to own guns or want guns not to be owned in the country.
Okay. I do. I mean, I believe in the Second Amendment, obviously. I do believe it's a different way of life. We should be living with them. I don't personally, yes, guns make you feel powerful. I've shot guns. I've gone to gun ranges and have fired firearms. But in the Constitution, it says the right to bear arms by a regulated militia. You know, to me, that means a militia that is actually established, whether that's in a state or the entire country, but it's separate from the government. And it's a group of people that have come together. I mean, we do have militias, but I feel that guns should be they are a privilege, just like you go out for applying for a vehicle and your driver's license and everything. You got to be responsible. I personally don't like the fact that someone just gets a gun, doesn't have any training, but if they are cleared of any felonies or misdemeanors, they're perfectly capable to have a gun, you know, as far as the law is concerned.
Yeah.
So I think that's incorrect. I think we should be trained on how to use weapons, why we use them. They were designed to be killing machines. Yes, you can use it for sport, hunting, but they're killing machines at the end of the day. So I think we should be treating them more like that than, and I believe we should have the second right. But I don't know. I kind of get mad because, you know, when people do die from guns and we have these gun rallies or these organized events about gun shootings and mass shootings and everything like that, you never hear about mental health. You never hear about the systems that they can create in the schools so that can't happen. You know, one quick question I want to ask you about this. Mm-hmm. Do you like the education system? I mean, it's going to correlate with the guns, but do you like the way that we have our education system? And why I say that is because instead of having children go to school, high school, we have so much technology right now where they could be taught at home instead of buying them and taking all the taxes that we have towards the education system for school buses, lunches, blah, 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 blah. So it would be super cheaper, super easier to teach them at home, have the teacher, you know, we'd have a lot of teachers available. So that's what I'm getting at. Why even have institutions like, you know, schools? Why not just have it where the system could be set up to where you can be taught at home if you wanted to?
That's a great point. I just really quickly, I'm going to get to that. I do want to jump in because I'm seeing it going crazy right now with the gun discussion naturally. And as people point out, you know, the Second Amendment, people cite the Second Amendment and the right shall not be infringed, et cetera. What is a militia? Someone's definition of militia is anybody capable of being in the militia. That's really weird. Anyway, the point is the Constitution was written a long time ago when guns looked different. You can make the argument that the constitutional protection only applies to the definition of a gun at that time, and therefore anything else that's been developed or created or invented since then is not covered. You could easily make that argument because you cannot say that the people who wrote this document intended it to be used for things that they hadn't even conceived of, that didn't even exist. Just like the Constitution.
Well, that's why we have amendments, though, right?
Yes, but that's the problem is people cling to that one. That one actually is an amendment, but people cling to that one when don't want to adapt it. When you look at things like the Constitution has failed so utterly in the age of technology with discussing, you know, how to handle the internet, communications on the internet. It's a document that has to be updated, and people who adamantly say the Second Amendment is the way it is and that's it and you can't do anything about it. I mean, are you guys as adamant about the secularitarianism of the nation, right? Because by that logic, any politician who says the Bible influences me is, you know, betraying the Constitution and should never be allowed to run for office.
That's the separation of church and state. But I want to interject real quick because Poom said kids need socialization skills. Dude, there's no socialization skills right now in school. Like, not at all, dude. You have cliques and that's it. Barely, if you have any.
I agree. And I went to a school that was full of cliques. It was terrible for that reason. And you know what? On the one hand, I did learn a lot of valuable lessons by being ridiculously ostracized for 12 years. But I also agree with you. I think if you personalize education in that way, oh dear, somebody's handle is Adolf Hitler. I'm so concerned right now. I hope this is somebody who just created a new one right now, but I don't know. Anyway, not important. You do your thing, Adolf. Han, no, my cat is decided to come bother me. He wants to know why I'm paying attention to my computer and not to him.
Yeah, it wants to give 2 cents about the gun rights. Yeah, go ahead and let them.
Han cares about guns. Oh no, he's trying to destroy the light. It's fine. If something crashes, it's Han's fault. Personalizing education in that way, I think, is an excellent thing. As someone who was a victim of public school, and I went to a school that was supposed to be one of the top 200 public schools in the country, and I found the education to be ridiculously lacking. Definitely. Yeah, had I been allowed to do, I even talked to my parents at that time. It was not as popular. I wanted to look for online programs to do myself. Had I been allowed, I could have spent so much less time, doing that, and so much more time practicing guitar, and I'd be a goddamn rock star.
Exactly. I was homeschooled because I knew for a fact I didn't want to stay in school for 8 hours, bored out of my mind, not doing the subjects that I want to do.
Yeah. I wish my parents had been a little more open to that. Certainly not going to happen with my grandma. My grandmother just would have had a heart attack and died if I didn't go. My grandmother still tells me to go to law school just in case.
So Tyler McPherson says at you, I think we just need smaller classrooms and less students. More classrooms, but less students. That could help with socialization skills. But that's a lot of effort and tools to be used.
So now I do also think there's an extent to which, because of technology, we are losing touch with people. What I would advocate here's my crazy perfect world model, right? You have a course and you choose the courses that you want to take and you do them at your pace. And let's say X times a week, maybe a couple times a week, 2, 3, who knows. You convene in a classroom with other people who are in the same place that you are in the work, right? So if you work fast, if you go through this, you're at that level, you're at that place. And maybe you can even take placement tests to determine your level of critical thinking, so you can be sorted as well, not just by or you could also just decide, if I read really fast but I'm stupid, I maybe not want to be in the smart people class. So you have that because I think that debate element, that just discourse element, what we're doing right now, is so important for fostering growth. I'm in favor of a model where you do that, where you learn on your own, but certain subjects, math, sure, you can just do that totally by yourself. You don't need to fucking discuss math. But other subjects, like history or literature, I missed my finger. God. History, literature, etc., anything with a subjective element to it, that you can come in and have discussions and share opinions, present papers, whatever it is. I think that would balance out both of those.
Sure, definitely.
And then you're not draining the resources because you're not fracturing into smaller groups all the time. This way you can have the same number of classrooms, the same number of teachers. You're just
exactly, and you can actually have the teachers that you would actually know them by reputation, how they teach, what subjects they're going to teach, and how efficiently they are. So it's just it would be an overall better system than what we have now.
It would be. It absolutely would be. But you need someone to put. You would need people willing to put that time into education. Right now, education, the areas of government that focus on education reform are not even staffed. So fuck that. That ain't happening anytime soon.
But yeah, I think as far as the Second Amendment, when it comes to guns, I think that would help solve a lot of issues when it comes to mass shootings. Either that or
if we're not in classrooms, you can't kill us all.
Yeah, exactly.
But I also think gun education for me is a huge deal. If we are going to have guns in this country, everybody should know stuff about them, and everyone should hold one, because definitely, the first time you hold a gun is a very powerful experience, and that experience can be altered based on who it is that hands it to you for the first time. Definitely. If your buddy hands you a gun, is like, hey, let's go shoot shit, haha, and you're 12, you're gonna have a different appreciation than if somebody goes over gun safety for you, hands it to you, and screams at you the second you put your finger on the trigger when you're not supposed to.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people too, sometimes they buy it, as a deterrent, but they don't even go to gun ranges. They don't even know how to reload it. They don't even know how to take the safety off. And when it's time to use it, they fail to use it.
Yeah. And this whatchamacallit? Sorry, I just got distracted by by someone in the comments who's really upset that we're agreeing too much. Were you here for the Judaism stuff?
Yeah,
I was good.
I'm still upset about it, but it's okay.
You can't see Durf; he's in tears. Guns. I forget what I was going to say. I was just terrible because it was super important.
Education about them.
Yeah. So I totally forgot the fuck. It was. I feel like it was.
Did it have something to do with school and shootings, or?
It had something to do with it was kind of on that first time you hold the gun and the responsibility, and then you said something. I was like,
the power behind it. Yeah.
Forgot what I was going to say next. It's okay. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Well, let's not let the people down. What do you think we're really gonna? What else are we really gonna disagree about?
How about there's human rights, versus SJWs. There's a difference between SJWs and human rights.
I think we're gonna totally agree on this one.
Probably.
Because SJWs are terrible humans that don't believe in
anything. What about overpopulation and the social decay of our society? I mean, we'll probably agree on that too.
We might. I mean, I don't know if you'll agree with my solution to overpopulation, which is just kill more people. Just like in the face.
That would be the easy way out. Super easy, but
easier than colonizing the moon.
I feel like, we'll definitely have that. Like we'll be able to cultivate people on other planets pretty soon. So, we are like at 9 billion people almost. That's insane. 9 billion people.
Someone who we can yell at other people about the SJWs. SJW is not a fake term for people you don't like. Actually, there are people who identify as SJW sometimes, but they came out, the phrase social justice and arguing for social justice was the term that was created by the people doing it. The sarcastic warriors element was added by people who don't like them, because there's a lot not to like, by the way. And if you haven't, I feel like a lot of people who take offense to the term SJW or don't like the term or like that's just an outright button word have never actually met an SJW.
Yeah, they're not being activists for anything. They're just complaining. That's all they're doing.
And this is such a thing in college campuses where rather than going out into the world and having real protests about real things that matter, they find things to be pissed about on campus. My college campus is a great example. That was my first experience with this movement. There was a house on campus called Merck. And they threw a party on Cinco de Mayo called Cinco de Merco. And it was all like, yay, let's celebrate. Let's have an excuse to get drunk, right? That's what Cinco de Mayo is for Americans in this country, is an excuse to get drunk. And this is, by the way, bothers me too on that topic, because people are like, it's offensive to Mexican people to appropriate their culture as a reason to get drunk. I'm like, okay, but we do that with St. Patrick's Day as well. But apparently the Irish don't.
You do it when you go to a Mexican restaurant. I mean, what the hell's the problem?
Right, but then like the Irish aren't allowed to get offended by that because the Irish people are white too, so we don't care about their feelings. That doesn't make any sense. You can't appropriate white culture.
Where does this stem from? Where does this? I mean, obviously, it stems from I want to say left wing ideology from universities being pushed out. I mean, I don't personally know where it actually came from.
I think extremism on the college campuses comes from the cognitive dissonance of these people who are so concerned about social justice, who are so concerned about political activism, but are these rich, privileged kids who sit on their asses and take advantage of the education that mommy and daddy bought them. I think that's that. I think it's cognitive dissonance. I have a cousin who's like gender fluid or trans. I'm not really quite sure what she is at this point, but she ended up like leaving college and protesting some project, like sat in a tree and got arrested and stuff like that, and then had to petition to get back into college because, of course, this liberal arts college didn't want to be associated with someone who got arrested. And so she's fought for her rights, her gender rights, her things like that. She's fought for environmental rights. And she is the least preachy, SJWE person ever. Because she's just walking the walk. She's out there just doing things, trying to make social change, being a fucking badass. She doesn't have to rub it in everyone's face. It's like, oh, you're all wrong and I'm right, to try to make herself feel better about the fact she does literally nothing to help anybody.
Yeah.
That's Elfie Dan, I love elves. I would never discriminate against your kind. Anyway.
Well, it depends what kind of elf. Is it half elves or?
Oh, that's true. Yeah. I mean, how do we feel about half elves?
They're almost good enough, but they're not quite elves.
Not quite. Oh, now someone's advocating for dwarf lives. We can't. They're short. As Randy Newman said, short people have no reason to live.
Oh, man.
Have you heard that song?
No.
Short People by Randy Newman. Same guy who wrote You've Got a Friend in Me for Toy Story.
Really?
Yeah, actually, and this is kind of relevant. He wrote the song Short People, and it's just a satirical teardown of short people and how they have no reason to live. And the whole point was a social commentary. And this is probably the beginning of the end of you know, good social commentary. It was of how ridiculous it is to discriminate against somebody due to arbitrary physical features. You know, he wrote the song during the 60s when this was very relevant. And everyone was like, dude, what do you have against short people? And no one got it. So he was like, fuck this, I'm not playing the song anymore. But it's a great one. If you guys haven't heard Short People by Randy Newman, check it out.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out.
You'll get a kick out of it for sure.
I want you to ask me something that you think that I would hate or disagree with you on.
Okay, see, I had some of these prepped, and now, of course, they're all out of my head. Where did I write them down? I don't even know. Okay.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to sabotage me at any moment, so.
I know. Okay, so no, because I know we agree on that one too. I was gonna say, what do we lose when we oh, how about this one? Here, I wonder, I'm actually curious. I don't know what you'd say to this. Something I've been rolling over in my mind. So what happens when we take any one group of people that's too similar, that's too many traits in common, and they continue to breed with each other?
Like, are you talking about interbreeding, or are you just talking about?
Well, yeah, inbreeding. You get West Virginians who all have 6 fingers and nothing between their head.
I definitely don't think that should be a possibility. That should be illegal.
Yes. So what do you think, though, if we have this cultural purity, right? Because there are specific diseases and issues that are prevalent, that are more prevalent in African Americans, that are more prevalent, or prevalent anybody from African descent, that are more prevalent in anybody from certain even cultural descents, white cultural descents, or otherwise. Do you foresee if white nationalists got their way and we all had our separate little states and lived, or, you know, white people got to go off in their own little worlds and only procreate with each other, are those issues that you think that they would run into eventually?
Well, I mean, that was actually a good point that I brought up with him too, was the fact that, you know, you have a lot of inbreeding and a lot of lineages that had like families that just kept interbreeding. So his point was the fact that you just keep it pure, you keep the bloodlines pure. Yeah, but
we do that with dogs, and now every purebred dog is a moron with hip issues.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there needs to be a balance in life. There's always a balance, you know.
So do you think we can start making the argument against white supremacists that they've been inbreeding for long enough that their mental faculties are slowly declining, and therefore we don't have to take them seriously anymore?
Yeah, because to be honest, I think it's a preference. I think them wanting to breed together is a preference. It's not really, I don't want to say a birthright, or, you know, just trying to preserve the white race, because we're really not supposed to be preserved. Genetically, we're not supposed to be preserving it. I mean, you can just look at it. We need to. You can have sex with whomever you want, as long as you love them and care about them, or whatever. It doesn't matter their color, whatever. But when it comes to I think that misconception is there with white supremacy, keeping the bloodlines pure. I feel that they're scared about losing their culture. Most of all, they don't want to lose their culture to other cultures telling them that they're bad. They've done this, you know, like you said, like kind of like attacking them for their past history. I think it's a shame. I see their plight. I do see their plight as far as they want to have their culture. Yeah. And I feel like they make it such a big deal that you can still keep your culture and you can still be happy, but you can't have like the entire thing be one way.
Well, that's what I don't understand is if we put more Black people in movies, if we put more women in positions of power, if we put more Mexicans in high-paying jobs, what do white people lose? What goes away?
I think it's really the culture. But let me ask you this then, because it comes to eugenics, because technically we're getting to the point in medicine where we can take out genetic defects, and, you know, we're starting to do that. So what do you feel like eugenics is a destruction of humanity when it comes to, you know, having the pure race, having?
So I think then that kind of comes back to the overpopulation issue too, is there's an extent to which we should not, and that's an interesting question that's come up, because Iceland, as a very small nation and a nation with very good health care, has almost eliminated its Down syndrome population. Mm-hmm. And that's become an issue for them because there are a lot of high-functioning people with Down syndrome. And if you are a high-functioning person with Down syndrome, that's some scary shit. I mean, your people like you are being completely eradicated. And that's tough because you could have a baby born with Down syndrome who's not capable of functioning on their own and living an independent life, or you could have one that's totally capable of that. And how do you make the argument that, I mean, my mom had children late in life where the risk was higher. She got us all screened, and she fully admitted, she was like, yeah, we might have gotten rid of you if you were Down syndrome children. Like, we might have aborted you. It was always fun. Thanks, Mom. But that's, it's an interest, because on the one hand, I'm like, well, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, no, I want a child who's going to be, I know is going to be healthy and fully functional. Obviously, you never really know that, but nothing wrong with saying, I want to eliminate the knowledge that this child's going to be different in this way and has the possibility of never being able to lead a normal life.
Right.
Versus, you know, I can agree. Like, personally, I'm like, until I read that article, it never occurred to me that there would be anything wrong with aborting a Down syndrome baby, given that you're a person who is okay with abortion. It never occurred to me that would be an ideological debate. But then, like, how do you talk to a high functioning person with Down syndrome and say, yeah, I believe people like you shouldn't exist? You know, that's really what you're saying. And that's really icky. I don't know.
To counteract what you're saying, because I believe that, I mean, from what do you believe in you know, same sex, well, not same sex, interbreeding? Like, do you feel it's wrong? And obviously you can, I mean, personally, do you think it's wrong? Do you think people shouldn't interbreed? And the reason I say this is because you look at India's population of interbreeding and their defects, like, it's astounding. And it's because they interbreed so much.
So how closely are we talking of relations for, like, what effect, what efficient?
I guess what I'm saying is, we know that interbreeding, like, a conscious person knows that interbreeding is wrong. Like,
what would you specifically define as interbreeding? Like, cousins, you know, how distantly related are we talking?
I'd say at least second, well, no more than second cousins. So, you know, sibling related and first cousins, you probably should, and parents, you should not.
Yeah, I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
Straight up think that's wrong. Think it's gross and wrong, and think that, yes, that, I mean, scientific, if you want to talk moral or immoral, I mean, it's pretty, most people are pretty black and white that inbreeding is immoral. Yeah. And most people are pretty black and white that having widespread genetic defects are bad. So when those two things are linked so closely, it kind of feels like, what is the argument for doing it? You know, like, that purity you're talking about is not, there's no tangible purity there. All you have that's tangible are 6 toes.
Yeah.
And mental retardation.
I want to answer some of the people in the chat right now.
Yeah.
There's one person that said that, but people can't interbreed. Elfdan, I think that's how you spell his name. Elfdan. Yeah. But people can interbreed, therefore you make people. But yes, yeah, you make people, but what kind of people are you making? I'm not trying to be inhumane or anything, but do you want to give your child a life of success?
Yeah.
Or do you want to have them persecuted for the rest of their lives and disabled and handicapped for the rest of their lives? You take a chance. And I want to kind of, from this, stem into, and I hope I'm not, just let me know if it's too touchy of a subject, abortion rights and you know, pro-choice, pro-life, because, well, let me get your stance on that first, and I'll tell you mine.
So I have a couple important ones. Like, personally, and this was like, the population control issue is a huge thing for me, and there's an extent to which we're not doing enough to combat that. So on that route, it's like, it's hard for me to get behind anything that's going to make that problem worse. It's hard for me to get behind advocating for unwanted babies when there are already so many in this world. I have a much more callous outlook on human life than most people do. So I look at a completely unreligious standpoint. I'm all for it. Now, I also don't think that it should be used as a form of birth control. I think that's messed up. I think it could also be like a strikes thing. Like if you've come in for an abortion and you're in like a happily married situation and you just fucked up and didn't use birth control or condoms, you have the baby. You should be able to fill out a survey, and if your mental health is in a certain like a high enough place, and your income per year is good enough, and your only reason is it's gonna affect my career, you have the baby. You fucked up. Deal with consequences.
Right.
You're rich enough that you don't deal with enough of them, so deal with some of these. But the flip of that, like if you are someone who got pregnant by accident because of a something that went wrong during intercourse, or because maybe you're someone who's not doesn't have access to healthcare, who doesn't have access to contraception and things like that, or you weren't brought up with good sex education to make you aware of that. I don't think your life should be ruined for that. And look, everyone's feeling abortion is murder. It depends on how you define the beginning of human life, but that's fine. I don't care. Murder them. Call it murder if you want to. There's no scientific. Actually, Bill Nye the Science Guy, by the way, Bill Nye the Science Guy he's
not a real scientist, though. Just want to let you
know. Fair, but he's awesome and he's very smart. Has a really good video about why abortion isn't murder. So, again, this is all about dissent and disagreement. If you guys are the ones saying abortion is murder, maybe you've already tuned out. Maybe you're like, fuck you guys. You're okay with abortion. I mean, you haven't heard what Derps has to say about it. Maybe he's with you, but look it up. Look up the dissent. And I advocate for this in my other videos. If you believe something absolutely 100%, look up the people who don't. Listen to the people who don't. Start understanding their point of view. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to change your perspective. Just please, please, please listen to people who think differently and who disagree. Please, that's all I'm asking. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to come around to those points of view at all. Just expose yourself to them. Open yourself up to them. One of my biggest issues with the abortion debate is how many people are pro-life and anti-healthcare.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. I mean, because if you look at our country, the last time they did, they took the numbers on this. Our infant mortality rate, our mortality rate of mothers giving birth, our issues and problems and accidents during pregnancy and birth, pre and post natal, et cetera, was as bad as Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, a country who hates women. We had the same mortality rates and the same accident rates and the same amount of complications as Saudi Arabia. And that was several years ago now. Our rates, I don't know about Saudi Arabia's, but our rates have been declining. It is possible that Saudi Arabia, if they've stayed the same or gotten better, are better at pre and postnatal care than we are. It's very possible. So that's something to chew on. So I don't know. I think if you're someone who's like, you need to take, you have to have this baby, but I'm going to do jack shit to help you take care of it, you fuck yourself.
Well, in all fairness, 100 years ago, before the healthcare system, how did people take care of themselves? I mean, obviously, you probably didn't have the high rates of cancer and diabetes and all these other diseases, but people still survived. People still, lived. Maybe not as good as they do now, but, point I'm trying to get at is we didn't need the healthcare system until a certain point, and the way it's run now is it's a business. It's not caring for people. It's making money off of people. Yeah, but
which is why I advocate for universal health care. That's not about the bottom dollar. It's about giving and I'm all about a tiered system. Everybody should have access to healthcare because that's the thing, right? Yes, at one point nobody had it, but nobody had it. Now some people have it and some people don't get it.
Can I say the F word on your channel?
Go for it. I say it all.
Straight up. Fuck the people. I'm sorry if I'm going to bash a couple people.
Oh, that's a rule. All right. Sorry, this is a rule on my channel. You're never allowed to apologize for offending people.
Thank you. Fuck the people who think it's okay to exploit people for money, especially their health. Because you know what, dude? If you think that's right, really you should go die. And I'm not saying that with all due respect, because if that's the logic you have in life, anything could be the same about you. Someone bigger than you can destroy you because you know what? You were too weak to do anything about it.
Fucking thank you.
That's the whole thing about this, dude. It's about the way we live as a human, as society. Yeah. If you don't have that logic and reasoning, and you think the healthcare system's okay and it's okay to make humongous amounts of money off of people dying.
Yeah.
You need to go check yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Abso-fucking-lutely. If you're one of those people out there blocking the development of life-saving drugs because you want to continue peddling the drugs that give palliative care instead of cures, you can fuck yourselves.
Yeah.
That's unacceptable. If you're the people who cut good staff at hospitals because it's cheaper that way, and you don't give a shit if you're hiring crappy doctors, fuck yourselves. Like, also, if you're the people who levy the bullshit malpractice suits, or if you're the people on the jury in those malpractice suits who stated after the cases, oh, I didn't think the doctor did anything wrong, I just felt bad for the person who wanted to have money. Fuck yourselves. You are the reason we have shitty healthcare. You are the reasons that healthcare is broken and that people are concerned with making money, more concerned with money than with good health.
Exactly. I do want to talk to some people real quick because they are bringing up some points. I am agreeing with you a lot, but abortion, I don't agree with you on. I do consider it murder. I consider it, well, I'll give you an example. So bringing it back to, so if I'm a man and I'm more powerful than you, does that give me the right to overpower you and do anything I want to you because I can?
No.
Okay. If someone, and like you brought this up though, if someone was stupid enough not to realize that they have the possibility of having a kid with unprotected sex, they shouldn't. But if they do, yes, the responsibility, but kind of coincides in the same way. You know, you have a responsibility to do the right thing, you know, for just having, you know, an easy way out and not having to deal with a child. That's a terrible crime. I feel that it's an action against something. Abortion is taking an action against something, whether that's having to abort a rape victim's baby, or I don't know. It's just, I don't think that abortion should be legal for the sake, not just because of overpopulation rape victims, but overall, it is an action against someone, something. You can call it a clusters of cells, whatever, but it's wrong. Just like being aggressive towards someone is wrong. Any action against something that you don't agree with, that's wrong.
All right. So these are my hard questions, right? I have some very hard questions that I always ask people who are pro-life, and because because you sound like you're very absolute on it, which I always find interesting, and a lot of people are, with exceptions. So you've stated that. So by your logic, right, it's not right for a man to overpower a woman just because he can and rape her, right? Obviously, it's not. For me, telling a woman who's been raped that she has to have that baby is a form of saying what happened to her was okay.
But in all fairness, it's not me telling her; it's her body saying, "Look, I'm pregnant now." Like this is like saying, "Deal with it." You know what I mean? Like, you had this option to not have sex. You had sex. But now we're conceiving.
I'm talking about rape. I'm talking about rape.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Specifically, if a woman gets raped.
Yeah, gotcha.
And you say, okay, you got raped, and now you have to have the baby. That to me is a form of saying, like, yeah, it was wrong that you were raped, but it happened, so deal with it. Like you said, it happened, so deal with it. But then it's in some ways validating the act of the rape. In a weird way.
So you would consider it okay to abort the child, or some people are calling it a process. I mean, anything can be a process depending on you doing the right thing or not. But
look, I mean, if the country wants to come together and say women who get raped have to have the babies, but we are covering 100% of their health care and also their therapy forever, then you have an argument. But if you just have a system, if you have a government that says you got raped, have the baby, but fuck you, no health care. Fuck you, you'll probably die in childbirth because because you can't afford good health care. Fuck you, you're going to be in poverty.
Well, isn't there contraceptives you can take after the fact? I mean, for example, like the Plan B. You can take Plan B. I mean, I don't know if that's always going to work, but there are steps you can take before that actually. A lot of people
consider, because Plan B technically, a lot of people will consider that still an abortion, because what Plan B does is.
Well, if that's the case, birth control is a form of abortion.
No, the thing is, Plan B works specifically. Like, you can take Plan B no matter what. Plan B, the effect of Plan B is to terminate an implanted a
fertilized egg. Yeah.
It's to, yes, the egg has been fertilized. This is going to happen. If you didn't take Plan B, you would become pregnant. The Plan B, the majority of women who take Plan B wouldn't necessarily become pregnant. They have only the 80% chance that you do when you have unprotected sex. But how it actually works is you got pregnant. It destroys that, newly implanted fertilized egg.
Yeah, it's a thin red line because, I'm not defending rapists. Don't get me wrong, but there are so many things to try and put yourself, and also rapes have been going down, but that's not the point. The point is there are steps you can take, and I don't know if I should be saying this. I mean, maybe you think this is the case for women.
Wait, pause, because someone who clearly knows more about this points out that Plan B prevents the embryo from implanting. So, fertilized egg that has not implanted in the uterus. So it is fertilized. It is sperm and egg have come together, and if they implanted, would grow into a baby, but it stops it from implanting.
If I forget, maybe you can remind me. Do you want to? Tyler McPherson asked if we can debate about marijuana legalization.
Totally. We should definitely do that.
Cool.
Next. All right. Cool. So does that affect your answer? Do you have any feelings regarding like, it's only a viable fetus once it's implanted? Because that's a question too.
I feel it's the way it's handled is the proper issue. It's not what has happened, but what you're going to do with that outcome is really because anything, I mean, just like the law, if you have premeditated murder, they're not going to give you, first degree murder, but they're still going to treat you as a criminal, like you were trying to kill someone. So I'm not trying to compare those two, but it's the action, it's the outcome. And as a society, you have to look at that and see how we're evolving instead of like decaying. And that's how we are now. I mean, it's tough, but really we have to take a stance. It's either you're all for it or you're not against it at all.
And so I think that there are gray lines in it as well. But I'll ask my other hard questions in a second. I think really what the abortion debate comes down to, because I think very few people advocate murder. What the abortion debate comes down to is when you believe life begins, and that's why it's such a difficult debate, because it is intangible in some ways. If you're a person who believes that these two cells will come together and can form a life, then no one is going to change your mind about that, basically. So that one's a very difficult one because of that. That's why I always point to people to the Bill Nye the Science Guy video about it, because I think he explains it the best, and I should go brush up on it so I can summarize. I mean, feel more comfortable summarizing it. So my other hard questions are: what about when there is a high likelihood that the pregnancy will kill the mother?
Oh, honestly, I actually agree with you on this one, because I already know what you're going to say. In that instance, I do agree that the host should be saved. Okay. Because technically they have a right to life and their life will be taken away. But that's what I'm saying. It's the action. But wait. It's different though. It's the action and the outcome for me. It's not the process. It's the action and the outcome.
I understand that. And I just appreciate you saying that and the way you said it, because it always bugs me when people say everyone has a right to life. But when you talk about this instance, the people who say everyone has a right to life, so the mother has to die, you're depriving
someone. Life, that's what I'm saying. That life would take that other life away.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm glad we agree on that, because that one's a big one for me. Yeah. And again, I think that's important, is you can have, like I said, you have those differences of, if I believe life starts at a certain point and you believe it starts at another point, we're never going to agree on abortion and whether or not it's okay. But I like that, and most reasonable people, I feel like, have, like you even brought up, you have different feelings perhaps about Plan B in relation to rape, which I appreciate. And I'd be interested for you to ruminate on that further, given like what Plan B actually does in that situation. But my last hard question, Tay-Sachs. And there are a handful of others, and they're very rare, but there are a handful of other genetic defects like Tay-Sachs, which you can test for before pregnancy or before delivery. And a baby born with Tay-Sachs, typically that pregnancy is very dangerous for the mother. It's not necessarily fatal, but dangerous for the mother. And 100% of the time, a baby born with Tay-Sachs will live a short and painful life. They will live 2 years max, incredibly painfully, and die. And then you also have things like anencephalics, people born without brains. I don't know if you can always test for that or not, but there are certain ones, and I actually read an interesting article about a woman who found that out, that there was some terminal issue with the child. The child would not have lived. The child would have been delivered and essentially would have died within the next few days. And her point was being allowed to terminate that pregnancy was the one thing that allowed her to then go on and have another healthy baby later on in life. That if she had been forced to go through the trauma of delivering a sick baby who was going to die, that she never would have gone through pregnancy again and delivered a healthy baby. So in something like that, Tay-Sachs, the baby's going to be born. It's going to live in excruciating pain for an absolute maximum of 2 years and die. What do you do then?
Well, it's kind of from what I was taking from your logic earlier. Without growth, you'll never be able to evolve and expand. I'm not saying it's right. Obviously, it's a tragedy and it's really a sad outcome. But with anything, you can find it, not the silver lining, but you can find the good and a good outcome out of it. You know, I'm not talking about test subjects, but how are scientists and doctors supposed to be able to cure that disease if?
Well, it's not curable. It's genetic.
It's genetic. Well, I guess you would be able to take that out of then before that, I guess genetically.
Proper gene therapy, yes, but they can study that genetic defect with or without a living child. That's the whole thing about that is, the experience of giving birth to a healthy baby even is incredibly physically and emotionally traumatic. The act of raising of having to care for a child that sick and that in pain is incredibly traumatic and very expensive. And so what if you're talking about a situation like that, where having to have the Tay-Sachs child is then going to preclude that family from going on and having 2 or 3 other healthy children? Whereas if you, and obviously this is life versus potential life, it's not a murder question anymore, but it just seems to me like you're asking for, because with challenges we grow, but at the same time, I'm not going to go out and try to put myself through trauma needlessly just for the sake of growth.
Fair enough. Yeah. That's a tough one, to be honest. But really, it's not my call to make. The only opinion I have about it is, if it were me, if I was a woman and I wanted a child, and I don't know how long the term I would be, but if I was close to almost having it and then I found out they have sex, I would still have it and live with it. Because I would, either way, I'm going to live with it, whether I abort it or you carry it and then it dies. I'm still going to live with the outcome. So it depends on how I handle the outcome.
But you would have less of a judgment or be less inclined to prosecute a woman in that situation who chose to abort that child.
Personally, I can't go. I can't go against her. That's even more traumatic than it already is. But yeah, from my perspective, no, I couldn't go against that.
Yeah. I respect that, because that's, like I said, I have my hard questions, because with anything, and that's even in the abortion debate where there is so much absolutism, there are those gray areas. There are the things people haven't considered, like that, which is, again, it becomes kind of a situation of valuing one life over another. And it's the kind of thing where, like, if these, I would assume that if you could, like, go find these babies in heaven and ask them, like, would you rather have lived or not lived? I can't think of anybody who would be like, yes, it was awesome to be alive and suffering every second of every day. Great. But I don't know. That's a good one. All right, let's get to marijuana. All right, I'll let you answer first this time. Legalize it or not?
Oh, I actually had a conversation with someone at work today about this. Yeah, obviously we should 100% legalize it. And it's a tragedy, the way that the federal system is handling this. Because we all know it's a natural herb.
Yep.
It actually heals more ailments than other pharmaceutical drugs do. Yeah, I obviously think it should be legalized, but I think that any business, especially if you're cutting into the federal business, the ATF, if you're cutting into their business, trying to fight the war on drugs, that's their business. Obviously they want to stay in check so that they can handle that. I don't think all drugs should be legalized, but obviously marijuana should be.
Why shouldn't we just all be on ecstasy all the time?
Oh, if you want to be on meth, 100% of the time.
Yay. Um,
Ugh.
yeah, I'm with you. I'm with legalization. And interestingly though, here's the thing. I'm not a big user. And I really, really hate people. I don't hate people. I don't
Mm.
different kinds of people. It bothers me people who smoke every single day and act like that's normal.
Really? Depending, like, what? Well, okay, yeah, actually, I disagree with you on that. Why can't people smoke every day?
They can, but it's the same thing if people drink every day. You know, we don't look at someone who has 2 or 3 drinks every day. And fine, okay, if you have a glass of wine before you go to bed to unwind, or you take a hit,
It's the same thing. Are you
that,
talking about in excess of people
that's
abusing
fine.
it?
But I mean, people who get off of work and they blaze. You know, we think that's okay. That's in our culture has become an okay thing. Yeah, you get off of work and you just get stoned. Cool. That's like if you got off after work every day and got drunk. If you were that person, you know, the bowl before bed, you know, a couple hits before bed or a glass of wine before bed is fine. But if you're that person who goes every day after work and gets slammed, you know, just totally gets drunk, um, that's a problem. You have a problem. And I think that it's this, and again, yes, marijuana. I mean, it's totally absurd that we haven't legalized it when it's so much less damaging than alcohol. But it 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 doesn't Somalis don't get hammered every night either. They take wine. Jesus. I love my commenters. You guys are the best. But and yes, to that person's point, people who smoke weed in my experience are boring as yes. People who smoke weed people who get blazed every day are fucking boring.
Why
And
though? You have to be able to back this up.
yes, okay. So some of it is that, and it's not everybody. That's true, not everybody. I do have some friends who smoke every day. I still like them, and they're not boring. But a lot of people I know who have smoked pot every day, and who continue to smoke pot every day, they don't really want to do as many things. They're contented to just sort of sit and be. They're not like, oh, I'm gonna get high and then let's go have an adventure. They're like, I'm gonna get high and let's have an adventure on my couch watching movies.
So they become complacent pretty much.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of that happens a lot. And I think it happens a lot today because we want to tune out. We don't want to engage. We don't want to have to deal with the craziness that goes on today. We don't want to have to deal with other people. We don't want to have to deal with our belief systems being challenged, etc. We want to just like just chill and enjoy
So
yourself.
you're telling me that people who want to, like, hypothetically, if you were to smoke weed all day, be peaceful, that's not enough. You have to be able to do more because.
I mean, it's hard. Like if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But as a very ambitious person, I don't I don't relate to people like that.
I mean, yeah, because there's just simple people who just want to live simple lives, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and like again, that's not that much of an issue with me, you know. And if those people are the people who want to go out to the bar every night and get a little hammered too, like that's you're not hurting anybody. But I think you have to also understand that that's not you aren't living up to your fullest potential. And maybe that's just my personal stigma because I'm a perfectionist. I think I should always be doing more. I guess when it bothers me is less when people smoke all the time and more when people say they want to do all this stuff but instead get high. I think that's what bothers me more. People are like, yeah, I have all these ideas and ambitions and things I want to do, and then they get high and don't do any of them. That bothers me. That I find like I think people use it as a form of escapism as well. I do think that
Definitely.
people, and I think anytime you're on a mind altering substance, that's what that is. You're escaping from the real world, and it's so easy not to live in the real world today because social media allows us to disappear from that and live in our
Right.
bubbles and stuff like that. And I think that getting high all the time is just another way to disengage with reality.
So
Um,
there should be a balance pretty much.
yeah, absolutely. And again, like you want to smoke a bowl every night before you go to bed, fine. You want to get high every weekend, fine. I don't bother me. I don't care. But if you come home and blaze every night and sit on your couch and don't do anything, or just like whatever, I think that's I just everyone's allowed, as people are pointing out in the comment section, whatever, everyone's allowed to do what they want. You can all do what you want to do. I'm not going to go after you and be like, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. I just wish people would acknowledge that it's not a normal thing if you're doing mind altering drugs every single day and like every time you're not at work or even sometimes when you are on drugs. It's not a normal thing. That's not, and that shouldn't become a normal thing. If you're a person who wants to do that, do that. That's fine. But acknowledge that you are a stoner. Like that's a thing. That's a stereotype for a reason. Not everyone, not everyone adheres to the stereotype. Not everyone is a part of that stereotype, but that stereotype does exist for a reason. And I think you need to take a long look at yourself and see where you do fit in that stereotype and what else you could be doing with that time if you weren't spending it getting high. That's
Yeah, I do agree with you on that. I mean, you shouldn't have anything take away from your life. That is, whether it's drugs, video games, alcohol, that stops you from living your life, at least not fully, but just, completely. I mean, you got to be able to accomplish some things in your life.
yeah. And I also want to point out for people who are mad at me, I don't drink coffee, by the way, person. Except for when I referee fencing, because I can't without. That's like the one thing I have to have coffee for, otherwise I don't function. But that's psychosomatic and not physical. I just like to point out for the people who are like, everyone, you hate weed, whatever. For me, like you said, it's not just weed. Like there are lots of people, and I know I have lots of friends who all they do is play video games all day long, and they just don't do anything. I don't understand that. That's just it's not that I think that people can't do those things and aren't allowed to do whatever they want to do. But personally, me, yeah, I'm on YouTube. That's a lot. Like, and I have to be on social media now for what I'm doing. But outside of social networking for the purpose of being on YouTube and promoting my point of view and things like that, I deleted all of the games off of my phone. I have nothing, no computer games on my computer except for Logical Journey of the Zumbinis. If you want to know more about that.
So you're boring is what you're telling us. Sketchy. I'm just kidding.
Exactly. I'm supremely boring. No, what I do is I run, 1.5 miles to Krav Maga and beat the shit out of people and heavy bags, several days a week. I go out to the mountains that are, in Los Angeles and I hike those. Sometimes I drive out. I drove to Utah last year and camped in the desert. I fly around the country, in the interim, refereeing fencing. So when I have my downtime here, I reach out to friends. I try to go see friends and, be out in the world in nature and experiencing life. I'm going to see a free movie preview tonight because that's one of the joys of living in Los Angeles.
Nice.
Free movies sometimes, so that's, and I'm mad at myself when I sit around and don't do things.
Well, let me counteract real quick with that, just really quickly, because I used to be, when I was younger, all about video games, didn't give a crap about anything, stayed in my room, played video games with my friends. That was life for me. And I was like, going to grow up. I don't care if I make money. There was no Twitch back then. So it was just like, I don't care what I make money in, I'm just going to do video games for the rest of my life. But then it got to a point, like you said, it was an experience that I had at a job, and it got me more, outdoorsy. And I love the outdoors now. I love hiking, whitewater rafting. I love everything that I can doing outdoors. And if it wasn't for that experience, I mean, yeah, I probably would still be I don't want to call myself a loser, but just someone in my room all day playing video games. So, and I want to address someone in the chat real quick. They said that your poster in the back, the Thor Ragnarok one,
yep,
you're covering him up. You need to stop covering him up. But also, I also disagree with you on Thor Ragnarok. I hated that movie.
Okay, why?
It was boring, super boring. I paid $30, well, not just for myself, but I mean, I paid for the HD, like 4K. Dude, it was. Be honest. I mean, out of all the Thors, which one would you rank that? Come on.
Second. I thought it was better than I thought the middle one, like, I barely remember what happens in it because it was that to me.
I felt it was less Thor and more trying to be like Guardians of the Galaxy. It was trying hard. It was trying real hard.
That's the thing is, and I think that's what people lose, is that tone was there in the first Thor. We've lost it with Thor in the Avengers. We lost it with Thor in the second movie, but that sort of tongue-in-cheek element that we had that was in the first Thor, and that's actually the thing I mentioned about. That's why my dad likes the Thor movies, is because they don't take themselves that seriously.
Yeah, this is my dad's favorite character too, is Thor.
Dad things, right? And that's I think that what happened in it, and I can understand where you're coming from, because what happened in the movie is they set up this absolute villain and who just couldn't be beaten. So a normal movie, superhero movie like this would have the movie be the good guys trying to figure out how to beat the bad guy, and that was just not going to happen. There was no way. I would suffer from the same thing that like the Justice League movie suffered from, which was, we don't have it. We're just going to derp around for most of this movie because we have no way to beat this guy. Oh, wait, shit, here's our way to beat this guy. Now we do it. So Thor took that and they're like, okay, well, we know how we're ending this with this sort of, rock in a hard place type of nobody wins ending. But we're not going to spend the movie, dicking our way to that point. We're going to go off on this crazy little side plot that's super fun. And I thought did a nice job of also dealing with some of the, like, there was the Thor Hulk relationship, and Banner's character. I thought that was fun. You got a lot of Loki.
I thought Hulk was the best part about the movie, to be honest.
That's a really good part about it.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna be sad with more Loki. And I thought, fucking Jeff Goldblum was just such a perfect, ridiculous role for him. So
I think for me it was just the pacing. The pacing felt slow in places, like really slow.
Okay.
And like Odin, like I feel like the way they killed him off was completely terrible.
Yeah.
Like the way they're just like, oh, guess what? I'm going away, and here's the villain.
Yeah, that was a little.
There was no sentimental like value in that.
Yeah, and I think they dealt with his memory well between the two of them. But I agree that his death was very anticlimactic. So I think they handled the memory. I think they handled their individual relationships with him well moving on. And that for me was what I liked about the movie, is that it was less about the plot and it was more about the relationships. And I'm really into character driven stuff. So
definitely.
I liked that about it.
There was a lot of parts about the movie I liked. I felt like the entirety as a whole wasn't as good as the other Thor movies.
I'm interested to see then what you think of Black Panther, because that was a lot of people who didn't like it thought it had pacing issues as well.
Really?
Yeah, so I'm curious.
But I heard the story's really good, the characters are really good, the action's really good.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed it. I had a little chat about one person that somebody suggested one little fix that I think would have fixed all the pacing, because it actually addressed the one issue I personally had with it plot wise. So yeah, anyway, that stuff. Anything else in your mind? Otherwise I think we can probably get ready to wrap this bitch up.
Let's see. Oh, I guess really quickly, since it's not a taboo subject, but consciousness, God, self-illusions, intelligent life and design, where do you stand?
There are powers bigger than humans. It is ridiculously ethnocentric to think we are the most powerful, complex being out there. I mean, that's what true knowledge is, knowing how little we know. I mean, to think that we are the most complicated things that the universe ever spit out is absurd. As far as something that's a god, I think the idea that there's a superhuman-esque deity is ridiculous. Are there creatures, beings, powers, etc. that would look to us like God? Probably. Do those beings or powers give a shit about us? Probably not. That's kind of where I land on a lot of very sort of, I think there's a lot of, it's based on nothing, based on my personal belief systems, but it never seemed to fit right that there was some sort of Judeo-Christian God out there, like, watching over us. There were too many inconsistencies, too many paradoxes and contradictions in that ideology, with this, especially, with people saying, oh, here are all of the qualities of God, and then anything they can't explain, well, he's mysterious and we don't know much about him. Like, well, yeah, that's right. If there is a God, you don't know jack shit about it and what it's capable of and what it wants and what it's doing. So that's kind of, I feel like that sort of sums up where I land. How about you?
Okay. Well, definitely believe that there's a higher something, bigger than us. I kind of feel, and hopefully you guys don't think I'm like a Fruit Loop or something, I believe that we've already lived lives previous before. It's kind of like a river. You have a river that dries up, a river that comes back, and not all matter gets destroyed. So, it expands, contracts, expands, blah, 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 blah. But the point is that there's designs in everything. There's designs in your DNA. Something designed that for it to be that way. For it to, function the way it does, almost like a mechanical device. I definitely think that we've lived previous lives. Next time around, we might not live the same life. We might be a different color. We might be a different gender, but we still have that constant loop of going back in and out. I think there's a metaphysical relationship between us and something else.
When I was younger, and I haven't thought about it in a while, so I don't know if I still believe it or not. I used to believe that if you sort of, quote, failed at your purpose, and a big thing for me was suicide. I thought that if you killed yourself, that you had to come back and live a harder version of your life, basically. That was a cop. That was actually, it was a great belief system as a teenager, because it's probably the only reason I didn't kill myself. I was firmly entrenched in this idea that if I did, I was going to come back and it was going to be harder. And so I did definitely ascribe to something to that if you didn't do the thing you were supposed to do, you'd have to do it over again, but your challenges would be the same but greater.
Yeah.
So that's cool. That was kind of where I sat on that. And I think I like that. I like that idea. I definitely like that idea. I still like that one in regards to taking your own life, because I think it's a great reason, a very compelling reason to not take your own life, which is an awful thing that I wish people didn't do.
Well, that's something I disagree with you. I'm just kidding. I do agree with you on that.
I love suicide. Kill yourself, everyone.
No, I don't at all.
Totally against abortions. Totally pro suicide. That's right there. Love it. Love it. All right. Well, I think we're gonna probably wrap this guy up. Ooh, someone asked about assisted suicide. That's it. Maybe we should talk about that.
Sure.
We're on the topic.
What do you think?
I have no issue with assisted suicide, and we're talking medically. I'm not speaking about like, whatever. If you have a terminal condition, and if you have a completely terminal condition, and someone can set up a rig and you can push a button and make all the pain go away, and you have a 0% chance of getting better, I don't have an issue with that. The euthanasia question gets a little hairier, but I think if you can give a defined, understandable, agreed upon by multiple sources form of consent to say, yes, please end it all, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah. I think suicide is also, it's a personal issue. That's something someone's got to take upon themselves. Yeah. I can't tell someone to do something not to themselves. I might disagree with them, but when it comes to, I don't agree with suicide. I would never do it, and I don't think people should do it, but it's their choice. It's their life. The only one that they're affecting is themselves. Well, that's not true, actually, because you do affect the people around you.
Exactly. So how about, we're talking
physically, medically? Yeah. Oh yeah, medically.
You're on your last days. You're suffering from something terminal. There's a 0% chance of you getting better. You would like to take the burden, remove the burden from your family, remove the pain, etc., and just say, all right, peace. It's going to be tomorrow or 3 weeks from now or 2 months from now. Anyway, let's just do it today. Closure, done.
Am I allowed to call them a pansy if they do then? Because
you are.
Okay. If we got to stick with it, why the hell does someone else get a free ride? Is all I'm saying.
Well, there's also there's the argument too where your family suffers as well. Maybe people have other people in your life have put their lives on hold to essentially come and watch you die.
Maybe they want your life insurance check. You never know.
Right. Exactly. So I think there is at that point, there can be a lack of selfishness if you have become a burden on your loved ones and you want to remove that burden. I think that's probably the only way that any form of suicide could be unselfish.
I guess I could see that. I don't know if I've ever had an idea about someone doing that, but I could see that perspective.
It's really just the next step after people who stop seeking life-saving care when they're in a terminal situation. Really just one step after that. Oh, well, I'm no longer on life support. I'm no longer doing things to prolong my life. I'm just succumbing to the natural circumstances. It's really just one step beyond that.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point, because you could have someone who's in a coma, or like you said, a vegetable, and their last wish was to be terminated before, or if that ever happens to them, they would like for them to be terminated. So
exactly. So then it becomes an easy thing of like, oh, well, my entire family flew out here to say goodbye, and they would like to, pay the respects and whatever. It just, for me, it would be like a really nice thing to do. Be like, well, you guys are all here. Let's not prolong everyone's suffering. Get me in the ground.
That's true. It's not a selfish act. It's more of like a selfless kind of, it's almost heroic in a way, but not really, but yeah. Yeah.
I think it is it's typically more giving, especially if it's done for those reasons, but I feel like it probably is a lot of the time, and what a nice thing to be able to give to your family who's waiting around maybe in different parts of the country saying like, okay, I don't know when this is going to happen. This is something that's looming over me in my life. Whereas you can say, hey guys, Saturday, everyone come, give me a big old kiss, and then, party it up at the wake, which is what I would say in that situation. Because that's how I go out.
Okay.
But yeah, so That's
well, good.
all right. Well, that was fun. That was end on that super dark note. Definitely. But Dur for Nothing, thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful live stream. Thank you all lovely viewers for joining me. Based on some of you guys have been here for most of this whole thing. So, great. Iron Wolf, I'm looking forward to that video response. Durf, I'll let you have the last word. Take us out.
Yeah, sure. Just want to straight up say thank you for letting me on your platform and just kind of like shooting this shit with you and, you know, talking about all things and nothing pretty much. If you guys ever want to reach me, I'm going to start making videos and kind of like get into more stuff like this and hopefully kind of reach out to you guys. If you guys have any questions or concerns or ideas about life that you want to bring up, we can totally have that discussion. So yeah, I'm excited. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and link your channel in the comment section. People can start subscribing so they get updates when you start putting out new content.
Cool. Thanks.
Bye.
All right. Bye. Thanks.